Hi, I'm Terry Cox, Communications Director with the California Statewide Law Enforcement Association, and with me today is Chief Counsel and General Manager Kasey Clark. Kasey, first of all, for people who don't know you, introduce yourself to us. Let us know a little bit about your career as an attorney and your role here at CSLEA.
Thank you, Terry. Prior to coming to CSLEA, I was with a private law firm for about 13 and a half years. I've prided myself in always having represented public safety employees, both at the local level and now with CSLEA at the state. I was a PORAC Legal Defense Fund panel attorney with the firm that I previously worked at, and I responded to hundreds of critical incidents, primarily involving peace officers involved in shootings and other critical incidents. Since coming to CSLEA, I'm now Chief Counsel. I'm responsible for the legal division, where the staff of attorneys in both Northern and Southern California provide representative services to our members. And I am also General Manager and responsible for overseeing the day-to-day operations of the entire organization.
Part of that is fielding the questions that come in from our members, and a lot of questions surround the Legal Defense Fund. Can you explain that for us?
Yeah, the CSLEA Legal Defense Fund is actually a trust that was established under federal law. This dates back to 1990 was its date of origin, and the people who were involved in the organization at that time had the wisdom and the foresight to see how important it was to have a prepaid legal defense plan to provide services primarily in the area of civil and criminal defense arising from the scope of our members' employment. The services for the plan primarily fall within those areas of civil defense. If a member is named as a defendant in a lawsuit concerning what they've done or not done in the course of their employment, they can be provided a panel attorney to defend them. I would say in most of those cases, because our members have acted appropriately, even though the plaintiffs and the plaintiffs' counsel may have some disagreement with that, the state will provide a defense and indemnification if there's any damage award. But in those rare instances where the state might disagree whether the member was acting in the scope of their employment, we have the authority to appoint counsel if the trustees disagree with that determination. So that's the coverage relative to civil defense matters. Where the plan really comes into play most frequently is in the area of criminal defense and in both investigation and potential prosecution for matters arising from the members, or we refer to them as participants under the plan's employment. And those people may be more familiar with. Those are, officer-involved shootings, both on or off duty involving our peace officers. There's an example. We had a special agent in the Riverside area a couple of years ago who had some people that were burglarizing his home while he was home with his family, and he ended up getting into a shooting with the people that were attempting to rob him. That's still considered course and scope for that peace officer because he's obligated to act and utilize lethal force at any time, even whether he's on the clock or off the clock. And so that area is the area that you're going to see most of the authorization for legal coverage under the plan. There's also the trustees have the authority to authorize, instead of defending our members, actually taking the affirmative step to sue on behalf of participants. And if there are cases that are deemed to be of major importance that will benefit CSLEA members statewide, then the trustees can authorize the services of an attorney to actually sue somebody if that's something that they deem is worthy.
So who's entitled to this coverage and how much does it cost?
Well, this is it's a real bargain in terms of what gets paid for, because $2 of what members already pay in the general dues is what is redirected into the Legal Defense Fund. So $2 per participant per month goes into the fund. Those assets may only be used for the benefit of participants that are covered by the plan. I'm pretty proud at this moment to say that through the stewardship of the trustees throughout the years that the fund is now up to $1.4 million in assets, which is a nice sum to have available if you have a case that where legal services are going to be needed to be provided, for example, an actual criminal trial. Our peace officers don't get prosecuted very frequently, even though they're involved in shootings. I would say 95 to 98% of the time, there isn't a criminal prosecution alleging that the force was improper. But if that does happen, and it happens rarely, and in that unfortunate circumstance, we have those assets available to pay for the attorney's fees, the expert witness fees, the costs that a trial demands. And in that case, you're talking tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for a single case. So it's pretty substantial.
Is this available to all of our members?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about some of the cases involving peace officers, but the assets for the plan are available to our non-sworn as well. And in fact, some of the most memorable cases in recent years are cases involving our non-peace officers who've had access to benefits. We had a few years ago a CHP dispatcher that was prosecuted for workers' compensation fraud, and through the preliminary hearing process, the attorney that we had assigned to represent that individual had the charges dismissed at the preliminary level. She was facing felony charges, and we also had a dispatcher who was charged with possession of stolen property, went through an actual jury trial, was acquitted by a jury of her peers. Right now we also have a licensing registration examiner who is facing 8 felony counts of computer fraud, who has been authorized the services of a panel attorney. So it is not a peace officer exclusive benefit.
What should a member do if this member is involved in a critical incident in regards to LDF?
The biggest thing to bear in mind is there's a tendency to want to speak and vent and get justification from others for the individuals that are involved in the actual critical incidents, the shooting. They want to know what they've done is appropriate. And oftentimes making statements to people can later come back to be a problem. And so my first advice would be, limit what you say. Certainly the investigating agencies are entitled to what's referred to as a public safety statement, meaning they're entitled to know, are there any suspects still at large? Is there anything that should be a concern that is an ongoing present threat to the community that needs to be addressed? And other than that, you should just wait for the panel attorney to get on scene to then explain the processes, to then participate with the involved officers in the walkthrough of the critical incident, and to make a determination as to whether they're going to provide a voluntary statement to the investigating agencies. So the biggest thing is, use the 800 number, call me, I'll make sure that we get somebody out to represent you, and then try to sit tight. Sometimes there's a little travel time that's involved, but most of the time we just had a shooting this past week down in the San Diego area. The incident occurred at 2:10 in the afternoon. I was on the phone very shortly after I got notified. At 3 o'clock, I had spoken with the panel attorney, and I assumed that he was on scene within a half hour, 45 minutes. And that's really quick. I mean, these scenes that take a long time to investigate, and they go on for several hours. So that's my advice.
Kasey, if you had to summarize how valuable this plan is to our members, what would you say?
I mean, it's a huge value. I assure you that dispatcher that got prosecuted for workers' compensation fraud never in her wildest imagination thought at some point in her career that was going to be an issue. But the $2 per month that she paid into that plan, the amount of services she got in return for that was enormous. Maybe there were days where people could draw on the equity of their homes and utilize those assets to cover something like a criminal trial. But you have to bear in mind that even if you're successful in this process, you don't get those attorney's fees back. So if you have to go into your assets, your personal assets, and pay out of pocket, you're not getting that money back even if you're ultimately acquitted. I've spoken with that dispatcher on numerous times. She's done some recommendations, some testimonials for us in the past just because of how valuable that resource was for her and how reassuring it was. And so $2 a month is a very prudent investment.
As we wrap up, is there anything about LDF we haven't brought up that you want to let our members know about?
In closing, the only thing that I'd like to add is I spoke earlier about 98% of officer-involved shootings don't result in criminal prosecution. So people may say, well, if they never result in criminal prosecution, why should I really be concerned about needing legal defense? And for peace officers that are out there with that mindset, I'd just like to correct it, because having had personal experience with so many involved officers throughout the years, having an attorney that's been through the process there shortly after it's occurred to guide them and let them know what to expect, what they need to do, to help them prepare for their interviews, to tell them that it's going to be okay, is so reassuring and so important for those involved officers, that is worth it, just to have somebody there by your side as you go through this. So, don't discount it, by disregarding and saying, well, even if I am involved in a shooting, what are the chances are that I'm ever going to get prosecuted? You will want to have an attorney there if you're involved in a critical incident.
Sure sounds like it. Thank you for walking us through that. If you have any questions for us or for Kasey or any of our 6 attorneys here at CSLEA, email us or call us. We have an office in Southern California and in Northern California, and we do look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.